Happy New Year. Hope everybody enjoyed their holidays, got to spend time with family, got some presents, and made a wish to land more 5 stars than your team did last year. This is the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Josh Newberg. New year, same BS from me. I'm not changing on you at all. We got quite a bit to cover today. We're going to get started with what remains in the 23 class and what's starting to pop off in 2024. Let's bring on Director of Recruiting here at On3, Chad Simmons. Chad, what is left of 2023? We have a couple prospects that remain uncommitted in the top 100, Nicholas Harbor, Duce Robinson, and 4-star corner Rodrick Pleasant. Now, there's one player who is committed but remains unsigned in the top 100, and that is 5-star cornerback Cormani McClain. We're going to talk about him later. I'm going to get Gary Ferman of CaneSport on to come and talk all things Cormani McClain. Chad, I want to start with you with 4-star corner Rodrick Pleasant. He's inside the top 100, 94th best player overall, the number 8 ranked corner in the country. He's not going to announce his decision until February 1st. Rodrick is planning to visit USC. He's taken other trips to Boston College, Cal, Oregon, and UCLA. Who's he down to? What are you hearing on Rodrick Pleasant as he enters January?
You know, I like USC's position right here late. Obviously, getting the last visit is important. You know, the first weekend that Lincoln Riley took that job at USC, he had, 20 to 30 recruits on campus hanging out there in LA. Pleasant was one of those guys, with guys like Malachi Nelson, guys like Mekhi Lemon, guys that are already part of that class. He's very familiar with the commits and signees in this USC class. He obviously likes the opportunity with football and track, which is very important to Pleasant as well at USC. And I like where they're at heading in this final stretch. Obviously, Oregon, I think, is very much in play. He has a teammate headed to Cal, so there's a connection there. He was at UCLA right before the early signing period, and they made a big, I think, push and made a big impression, but I still like where USC's at heading into these final weeks.
Yeah, and USC's trying to make a push into that top 10, sitting at 13 right now. Landing Pleasant could give them that boost they need to get into maybe that 10 spot. Another big-time prospect making his decision is 4-star defensive lineman Ashton Porter. He'll announce tomorrow, January 3rd, at the Under Armour game. He's the 303rd ranked player overall, according to the On3 consensus. Oregon leads with 91% on the recruiting prediction machine. We'll see what happens. He's also taken official visits to Michigan State and Northwestern. He was a one-time Northwestern commitment early on in the cycle. I think he ends up at Oregon. Chad, let's talk about the number 1 tight end in the nation, 5-star Duce Robinson. I got to ask you, is USC the team to beat heading into the month of January?
I actually like where Georgia is as the team to beat heading into January. USC was the early favorite. At one time, we thought maybe a summer decision could come. And if that happened, I like where USC was at the time. Since he took that OV to Georgia during the season, the Bulldogs had definitely gained some traction and picked up some steam. I think, obviously, their tight end room speaks for itself. How they use the tight end position obviously appeals to Duce Robinson. Also, we know he's a baseball star. They actually offered him in baseball before they offered him in football. So he has a connection with the baseball coach at Georgia, football coach at Georgia. Again, this was not a done deal. He'll go to Oregon in January. USC's in the mix as well. I think you have to watch Texas also. But I like where Georgia's at right now early in January.
Yeah, Duce made a comment at the Under Armour game saying that he might want to catch some passes from Arch Manning. Do you think that Texas could get up into that top 2 that you're talking about with USC and Georgia?
Yeah, they might be there right now, Josh. I do think Georgia's probably the school trending the most at the top, but I don't think I think the top 3 is Georgia, USC, and Texas. Who's number 2? Who's number 3? I think it's a pretty tight race there in that 3. I do like where Georgia's at on top, but who wouldn't want to catch passes from Arch Manning? Who wouldn't want to play
I would.
in Sark's offense? I mean, obviously he's known for offensive firepower, and Texas had a good, second year under Sark. But yeah, I think it's very appealing and only helpful for Texas having Arch in that camp.
Visits are always important. In terms of Duce Robinson, where could we see him visit in the month of January?
It looks like Oregon will get the OV, the final fifth and final visit for him. That's been kind of the plan, that school, for months. I think Arizona State's trying to get him on campus for an unofficial. Again, Duce doesn't do stuff unless he feels like he needs to do it. And it's all business for him. It's not about the games, not about the photo shoots, not about the clout that comes with the top 5-star recruit. So I think right now Oregon's in line to get that fifth and final official visit.
All right, will be interesting. We'll see if Kenny Dillingham can sneak in there and get Arizona State in the mix. Moving on to another 5-star, the #1 athlete in America, Nicholas Harbor. He says that he's going to take an Oregon official visit January 27th through the 29th, a late OV to Oregon. What does that mean for Nicholas Harbor's recruitment?
I think he wants to take one more trip. One thing I reported on before he got down to Orlando for Under Armour Week is that he was likely only going to take 4 officials, not that 4th and 5th. In January due to his schedule. Obviously, we know he is a freak on the track. That's a big part of his decision. Oregon's kind of jumped in this. Again, I think with him, I always kind of talk with hesitation a little bit about where he may go. He's mentioned multiple schools from Miami to Georgia to LSU. Now Oregon's in the mix for that OV in January. Let's see if he actually makes it there later on this month. But, look, Oregon's making a run, but I think there's still 3 schools that every other school is trying to chase down, and that's Maryland, Michigan, and South Carolina.
Okay, so Harbor came out yesterday at Under Armour and said that he plans to mainly play on offense. Does that favor one of these teams, or is everybody already recruiting him on offense?
If it favors anyone, I think it has to start with that local program, Maryland. His mom went to school there, sister went to school there, and he said himself to me when I was in D.C. last month that Mike Loxley, the head coach at Maryland, was the first coach to bring offense to him. Have you thought about playing tight end? Have you thought about maybe, reserving your body more and protecting yourself more for the track program down the road? I think that definitely hit home with Harbor. At that point, Harbor started, I think, going to other schools asking them, hey, what do you think about me playing tight end? Maybe not so much defensive end or outside linebacker or the defensive side of the ball. So I think obviously Michigan's history at tight end, they definitely produced a lot of guys there. And we think Michigan could have the slight edge heading in to this final stretch. But South Carolina loves to throw the ball to the tight end position as well. They use 2 tight end sets a lot, also in Columbia. So I still think, if it favors anyone, maybe Maryland, because they're the ones that started that, and they will feature him in that offensive scheme. But I think all 3 programs I feel have a fair shot, can make their case there.
All right, lots of twists and turns left for Harbor, who is going to make his decision on the February 1st signing day. Now let's move to 2024. There's movement happening in the 24 class. Guys are deleting teams, narrowing their list, adding offers. We're going to have a little rule on the Inside Scoop when it comes to lists. If you're doing a double-digit list, we're not going to cover it. When it comes to single-digit list, we're going to cover it here on the Inside Scoop. So no offense to 5-star KJ Bolden, who came out with a top 15 yesterday. We'll catch you on the top 10. We'll catch you on the top 5 here on the Inside Scoop. Let's start with 4-star running back Stacy Gage out of the Tampa area. He was a IMG recruit his sophomore year, went back to Wharton High School there in Tampa. He's a 5'11", 200-pound back. Big-time speed, big-time player. Stacy Gage names a top 8. Take me inside this one. Who matters? He named Penn State, Oklahoma, Ohio State, UF, USC, Colorado, Alabama, and Miami for Stacy Gage. What of those programs stand out to you, Chad Simmons?
Yeah, Josh, I think, if you asked me this, 5-6 months ago, coming out of the summer, I like where Ohio State, I say Oregon, Ohio State was at. He took a trip up to Columbus. I think there was some buzz about him actually committing to the Buckeyes before or early in his junior season at Wharton High School. I do think Florida and in-state schools made up some significant ground. He was there in Gainesville multiple times for games this season. He likes Coach Jaluk, the running backs coach at the University of Florida. So I think 2 to watch right off the bat there is Ohio State and Florida. A couple others to keep an eye on, I think, are Oklahoma in Miami. So if I had to kind of cut it from 8 to 4, I think Ohio State, Florida, Miami, and Oklahoma are 4 to watch for sure. Let's see what happens with, Coach Prime if they can get into Colorado on campus. I mean, all these kids now are adding Colorado to that list. But I do think if I had to give you 2 to really keep a close eye on, Florida and Ohio State at the top.
All right. Yeah. Stacy Gage been on the scene for a while. Let's move on to 4-star corner Charles Lester, 6'1", 180 pounds out of Sarasota. The number 26 player overall in the On3 consensus. He named a top 5 that includes Alabama, Florida, Florida State, Georgia, and Ohio State. Who stands out to you in this top 5?
Yeah, I think this list is pretty legit, Josh, to be honest. I mean, 5 schools I think are still somewhat evenly in play. Now, I do think some schools may have a slight edge here or there. I mean, he grew up a huge diehard Florida State fan. I think, he's been there, he couldn't even count, maybe 15, 20 times in the last few years. So he's obviously close with Marcus Woodson. He likes what Florida State did this season in season 3 under Mike Norvell. FSU is definitely a true competitor. I think Florida's trying to make up some ground there, and they got him on campus this season. So I think that visit kind of put them in play for the top 5. But I think Georgia is an out-of-state school to definitely keep an eye on. Alabama's in play, as is Ohio State. But I think FSU and Georgia right now may be that 1 and 2 on Lester's list.
Another big-time player out of Florida that Florida and Florida State are going to try to keep within the state, but like you said, Alabama, Georgia threatening to pull them out of state. Another 5-star that teams from all over the country are going to be coming to Florida to take out of the state is 5-star cornerback out of IMG Academy, Ellis Robinson IV. On3 ranks Robinson is the number 1 corner in the nation and the second best overall player. He named a top 5 that includes Alabama, Colorado once again in the top 5, Georgia, LSU, and Miami. And he added that he could, quote, could possibly be committing soon, end quote. Chad Simmons, what does all this mean to you?
This is an old-fashioned battle between Nick Saban and, you guessed it, Kirby Smart. Those guys go head-to-head so many times, obviously on the field the last few years and definitely in the recruiting battles as well. Look, I mean, he's going to look at LSU. Obviously, Coach Prime appeals to him at Colorado. Miami got him on campus early. They're in play. But look, let's just cut all of it out.
Yeah.
It's Alabama versus – unless something drastically changes. This is Bama versus Georgia, Kirby versus Nick Saban. And I think right now it's super tight. If I had to lean one way, maybe the slightest edge to Georgia. But this could come down to official visit between him and Tuscaloosa, him and Athens, who he feels best with, who sells the program, his fit. But I think this is a Bama-Georgia battle brewing, which has been brewing, I think, since this past summer.
So when he says he could possibly be committing soon, what does that mean to you? What's that time frame look like if you're talking official visits?
Oh, well, I mean, he's going to take them early. So, I mean, he's not ruling out committing even before he takes an official. If he feels it, he said he could pull the trigger come February, March, but I do think he'll at least try to let it get to April, May, maybe even June, get at least a few officials in there. But don't be surprised if he doesn't pop back up in Tuscaloosa or Athens in January, in March. Obviously, they want to get him back on campus as soon as possible. He's a priority for both of those programs. And I think it's going to be a fun battle to watch between Bama and Georgia here for Ellis Robinson.
Yeah, and it's early in the 24 cycle, so it'll be fun to watch. This could be a table setter for more Alabama versus Georgia battles to come in the 24 class. Chad, thanks for joining us on the Inside Scoop. We'll talk to you again on Thursday.
Sounds good, Josh.
See ya. We're back on the Inside Scoop. We have the GOAT himself, Gary Ferman of CaneSport, is joining the Inside Scoop to talk, guess what? 5-star quarterback Cormani McClain. Gary, let me quickly...
Do we have to?
Oh, yeah.
Do we have to?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why you're here. That's why I brought you on. But I know you're going to try to wiggle out of it, but let me just reset what's going on. So 5-star cornerback, the number 1 quarterback in America, Cormani McClain, commits to Miami in October. Doesn't really say anything. There's no uprising. There's nothing going sideways until signing day. The early signing day comes. His mother tweets out in the morning that he will not be signing at his Lakeland ceremony that was expected to occur on Wednesday. He declined to sign through Wednesday to Friday. That's when the early signing period window ends. But Cormani McClain did show up at Under Armour practice. And from here, it's probably, Gary, it's probably easier to talk about what Cormani McClain did not do. He did not speak to the media. He did not clarify his situation. He has not signed with the Canes yet. So, Gary, to you, what is the latest with five-star cornerback Cormani McClain?
Well, I mean, I think the latest from the Miami standpoint would be Miami's probably trying to hang in there and battle it out to the end. Mario Cristobal doesn't do this any other way in recruiting. It's not his first rodeo. For us, in covering Miami recruiting, the warning signs were all over the place in the weeks leading up to signing day. Well, for starters, we sent one of our writers, Azubi Charles, on a 4-hour road trip up to Lakeland after Cormani McClain committed, to blow up Cormani McClain and promote him, help develop his name, image, likeness with interviews and videos.
Yeah, do a feature
and
on him.
Let everybody get to know him in many different ways. And basically, Azubi goes to Lakeland. He gets permission from the coach to come out to practice. Practice ends. Azubi's there to start doing the interviews. And Cormani is standing face to face with him and says, "I'm not talking to you. I've been told not to talk to anybody." Now, Josh, you've been doing this a long time. We've been doing this a long time. Whenever something like that happens, it never ends well. Okay, I can't think of too many situations in covering recruiting over the last 3-4 decades where a situation where a kid at his moment of euphoria, he has just committed to the school of his choice. He is fulfilling his dreams, Josh, but he doesn't want to talk to anybody. That was a major. Yes, that was a major warning sign for us. So that was the first warning sign. Then Sam Spiegelman, one of our recruiting analysts at On3, had a source that undeniably told him in the days leading up to National Signing Day that there is no way that Cormani McClain is going to sign with Miami. And
Sam caught a lot of heat for that.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. But our radar was up big time signing day morning. And then the show began, Josh. And, I'm sure your viewers know all about it. Mom sends out a tweet saying, it's not going to happen that day. The cake is on the table at Lakeland. Everybody had fun ripping up the cake when Cormani didn't show up for the signing. So the question now, I'm sure, is what happens next? And I can't imagine, after the effort that Miami put in, not just on signing day, but those 2 days after signing day, to get him to actually sign and have a signature not take place. It's hard for me to imagine that come here in late January, February, that situation is suddenly going to change and he is going to sign with Miami. If he was going to sign with Miami, wouldn't he have already done it already? But I know Miami's trying to hang in there. They will battle it out to the end. And from there, we'll see what happens.
All right, so let's dispel a rumor real quick. A lot of people talking grades. Gary, explain why grades don't matter in this situation.
Because if you have grade problems, it doesn't stop you from signing. You sign your letter of intent, you work on your grade problems moving forward. If you can become eligible by the summertime, you go to the school of your choice. A lot of kids have grade problems.
We've been seeing this take place for the last 30 years. You can sign with a program in December or February, and you can take your ACTs, SATs clear through the summer trying to get a qualifying grade, but it doesn't prevent you from signing. So I see a lot of people bring it up. Oh, well, Cormani doesn't have the grades yet, so it's simple. That's why he didn't sign with Miami, but that's not true.
No, and I don't think it's NIL related either. Miami's always in a very good position in the NIL stratosphere. I haven't seen NIL be the reason why they've lost the recruit yet. So I don't think it's NIL related either. I think that this is another school or multiple schools that were able to do something, whatever that might be, to hold off this signing on signing day and get themselves more solidified in the picture. And I think that if you read the tea leaves into that, it would be that he would probably end up at one of those schools. But
what schools
obviously
do you think have his ear right now? Besides,
I think Alabama. Alabama, very much so, is working that situation very hard. We've seen the stories out of Orlando at Under Armour game. Every Alabama commit there is working very hard on Cormani McClain. I think there's credence to the Colorado rumors. This is the type of impact that Deion Sanders would like to make. And, some people say Colorado, they don't have the NIL budget at Colorado to compete for Cormani McClain. I would disagree with that just because they may not have the NIL budget right now to run an NIL program like you're seeing, say, at a Miami, for example. But I think they could come up with the NIL budget to target a couple players. And I think this is the type of splash that Deion Sanders would like to make. I don't know that Colorado, as a destination for a kid like Cormani McClain, that could go to Miami, Florida, Alabama. I don't know where Colorado fits in that equation, but we've seen Deion pull this off before.
We saw Deion Sanders do it last year. Gary pulled the #1 corner in America, Travis Hunter. So he's going to try, obviously, to pull the #1 corner in America 2 years in a row. Like you said, maybe Colorado goes all in with their NIL. I don't think on the surface Colorado can compete with Miami when it comes to NIL opportunities, unless, like you say, this is just a one-off where, hey, maybe we need to get things rolling here and go all in on Cormani McClain. It's possible.
They have enterprise. They have enterprise in Colorado too, Josh. I mean, there's businesses all over the state of Colorado that, if they want to participate with the University of Colorado in NIL, can find the necessary dollars in their marketing budgets to do a deal with somebody like Cormani McClain. So if it, like I said, I don't think you're going to see 50 kids at Colorado with good NIL deals like you might at Miami. But I do think if they want to be a player and compete in this regard, that they can do it.
So besides throwing up the U, Cormani McClain has not really clarified anything. Well, I take that back. On day one of Under Armour practice, there was a video that went up of him getting burned. And I don't put too much stock into all elite players going 75% in taking frame by frame of what happened and making an indictment on a player. It's nonsense. But nonetheless, there was a lot of hubbub over the weekend of Cormani getting burnt in these one-on-ones. The following day, he's not participating in one-on-ones at Under Armour practice. Well, Cormani takes to Twitter as soon as practice is over to clarify. Guess what? He wants to clarify things. And Cormani McClain explains that he has a shoulder injury that kept him out of practice in day 2. Now, Cormani clarified his status on the field, but he has chosen not to clarify whatsoever his status of his commitment. Did you guys try to talk to him at Under Armour practices?
No, we left the Under Armour practices after the first day, Josh. I mean, there was no, he was the one that we were most interested in, and he wasn't talking.
He's just not talking at all.
Yeah, we spoke to Nicholas Harbor, who's another kid that we're interested in. So we left. We have a lot of other pressing matters down here in South Florida.
Let's wrap up the Cormani McClain talk. How do you think the month of January plays out? Do we think that Cormani's going on visit after visit, or is it going to be more of nothing heading into the February 1st signing day? I can't even imagine what this month's going to look like for him.
I think it's going to be, I would think it's going to be a lot of nothing. I mean, hasn't he already been everywhere other than, I don't know if he's ever set foot
Well,
in
he's
Colorado,
only taken
maybe
one official visit. Yes, he's been to Alabama, he's been to Florida, he's been to Miami, he's been everywhere. But he's only taken one official visit. So he has 4 more at his disposal if he wants to use them in January. That's why I say, he could make it all around, but by what we've seen so far, Cormani doesn't say or do much at all, which leads only to more speculation.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be guessing. Maybe he does take a few trips. I mean, I don't know that he's been to Colorado yet. If they're a serious player, he might take a trip there for sure. With all these guys at Under Armour hitting them up for Alabama, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he showed up at Tuscaloosa one of these weekends. But Josh, I mean, it's everything's guesswork right now with him, and he's not handling it as well as a lot of us would like to see him handle it in terms of his dealings with media and talking to people and just explaining what's going on. So I think we're going to be in wait and see mode on this one for most of the month.
We're going to keep covering this thing. So you guys don't forget to like and subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. We are here, myself, JD Piquel. Every day there's a ton of content on the On3 YouTube channel. Smash that subscribe button for me. Gary, Miami's class is sitting at number 4 overall in the On3 rankings. Who in this class do you think is going to contribute early for the Canes?
I think a lot of them are going to contribute early. You know, you look at Miami on the field this year, Josh, and it was pretty obvious there's a lot of issues there. And I think this is the recruiting class that's going to be looked at as the foundation to start changing that. And you start on the offensive line. Francis Magoa, Samson Okinola, the 2 tackles, they are going to get every chance to be starters in 2023. There's no question about that at all. I mean, as you go down the class, you know, I think you're going to see Malik Bryant get a great opportunity to play quite a bit. I look at the cornerback, Robert Stafford, who I think is a very underappreciated player. I think he's going to get a great chance to play very early in his career. Nathaniel Joseph, the wide receiver, is unquestionably, in my mind, going to be a big part of the Miami offense next year. Popo Aguirre, another linebacker, I think you're going to see get a chance to play certainly special teams, if not defense as well. Miami needs a lot of help at linebacker. I think Robbie Washington, if he shows up as dynamic as I think he will get an opportunity like Ray Joseph to be a big part of the Miami offense. Damari Brown at cornerback unquestionably is going to get a chance to play very early. Mark Fletcher at running back is going to get a chance to play very early. I think Christopher Johnson, with his speed, unquestionably will have a specialist type of role in the offense next year. I think those are the main guys. Another guy that I really like is Marcellus Pulliam. I think he's another very underappreciated linebacker, and with the help that Miami needs at that position, I think he is going to also get some opportunities to play very early in his Miami career. So, that's a lot of them right there, Josh.
This 23 class better bring their lunch pail. They better come ready to work because these guys are going to be counted on. And, hey, let's not forget Ruben Bain out of Miami Central. He's out there crushing it at the Under Armour game right now. He could also come in.
The only reason I didn't bring Ruben up is because, I think Miami's got some pretty good defensive ends coming back that are a year ahead of him. And I'm expecting Ruben, and maybe I'll end up being wrong on this. I think he might need a year of development. It's very hard to walk into college football, and he's a little undersized as a defensive lineman. I think he's going to need some time in the strength program, a little year in the nutritional program just to build his body and get his body ready for college football. I obviously think that Ruben Bain is going to be a very, very important piece for Miami. I'm just not sure it's going to be in 2023.
Yeah, I'm excited about him whenever he steps on the field. Big-time playmaker out of Miami Central. Gary, the 24 class. I know we're early on it. The Canes are ranked in the 50s. That doesn't matter. They're going to be a top 10 contender. But do you think Miami recruiting now raises the standard each year? Is a top 5 class now expected due to John Ruiz and Miami's just unbelievable NIL opportunities that they have down there?
Well, I think even beyond NIL, you're looking at a head coach, Mario Cristobal, that's proven that he can recruit on a national level. His last class at Oregon had the top player in 9 different states. And I see recruiting at Miami in 2024 going in that direction a little bit. But I don't think that the state of Florida and South Florida in particular is as deep in 2024. And I think Miami's going to have to, go outside the area a little more to do a lot of their recruiting this year. And Mario's very good at that. He's proven in that regard. So will they be a top 5 class? I don't know that there's going to be a ton of layups here that might lend itself to doing the top 5 thing, at least early in the game. Mm-hmm. But I think by the end of the day, when they get a chance to do their recruiting over the complete cycle, they will identify the talent where they have a chance to compete. And nobody competes in recruiting better than Mario Cristobal. And that's before you get to the 2023 NIL Online Man of the Year in John Ruiz. I got a kick out of that we ended up picking him as the top influencer.
Hey, there was nobody more impactful, in my opinion, in the NIL space in this cycle than John Ruiz. I mean, nobody.
Absolutely not.
So you expect this to continue into the 2024 class fully?
Oh, there is no question about it. I've discussed this with him. He is loving every second of what NIL is doing for him and what he thinks it's going to do for his company. Listen, before he started this, John Ruiz was just another guy in South Florida, if you believe it or not. There's a lot of rich people in South Florida. And this has totally put him on the map in the community here in the southern part of the state of Florida, as well as nationally. I mean, you're talking about him like a household name now in Nashville. I mean, and he bought all this for $10 million. Now, if you're really a guy that's worth $25 billion, and you could spend $10 million and make your name a household name all across America and in the community that you live in, where now everywhere you go, you are John Ruiz, the guy, the NIL god who's, doing so much for the Miami football program. That's a bargain in itself, Josh, $10 million to buy that type of image and status. People would spend far more than $10 million for that.
Canes fans got to love to hear that. It's not their money that they're spending. So, hey, more power to John Ruiz. Gary Ferman, thanks for joining the Inside Scoop. Really interesting stuff. We're going to continue to follow Cormani McClain's recruitment. We're going to continue to follow what the Canes are doing. Thank you for joining the Inside Scoop.
Oh, anytime, Josh. And yeah, you made one great point. There's no $10 donations taking place down here in South Florida right now. John Ruiz has the NIL world covered, but they do have a collective that I think is building momentum. So we'll see what happens in 2024.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. See you soon.
Always a pleasure, Josh.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.